Hello everyone and welcome back to On Point HQ. In this video I'm going to show you how I make really simple sort of rocky bases just using corkboard. If you've seen the last video I put out about my bolt action SAS, I've actually used this method to base them, and a few people made comments praising or saying how much they like the bases. So I thought I'd do a very short video on how I go about making these bases. Like I said, they're just made from corkboard, but they're really simple to make, and they're really pretty effective. This is the first time I've used them on bolt action figures. In the past I've used them to base my Wild West Exodus figures. There's a couple of photographs on the screen now just to demonstrate this. I wanted these based, like I said, in a kind of desert environment, and I thought, well, I'll try corkboard and see how it turns out. And lo and behold, it turned out really well. So when I decided to do something different for the bolt action SAS, yeah, it was this method that really sprung to mind. What I'm going to do is just run you through exactly how I make the bases for bolt action scale miniatures, just using a very simple corkboard. So I'm going to make 4 bases, and these are all going to be mounted on standard 25mm lipped Warlord Games bases. I'm going to make 4 of them. Now, materials: corkboard, one of my favourite materials to work with. Grit. You can use any size grit. I tend to use one that's sort of in between. It's not too thin, it's not too thick. It works really quite well. Super glue. This is just bog standard super glue, but it's the super glue gel. Since I discovered this product a couple of years back, it's all I use. It's a brilliant product, and it just works so well. You get plenty of time to work with it, so there's plenty of work time before it dries, and it's really good on these bases. So, onto the build. So like I said, what I'm going to be using is this piece of corkboard. With the base being 25mm, what I like is a bit of overhang, but with gaps either side, so it's not fully covering the base. Because what I'm going to do is use the grit to build up layers around the edge of the corkboard. So I'll just very simply show how I go about doing this. So all I need to do is snap a piece off, like so. That's clearly too big for what I want on there. As you can see, it's I know I like a bit of overhang, but that's taking the biscuit. So I'll rip a little bit more of that off. That seems to be okay. Now, as it stands at the moment, it's too big, it's too high. This is the size I used on my Wild West Exodus miniatures, but they're bigger. I think their basic is 32mm rather than 28. So at that scale, this doesn't appear too big. I thought with bolt action, it being sort of 28mm scale, they just look too high. So what I do is very simply a craft knife and just sort of cut it in two, carefully down the middle. And the benefit of doing this is that you get 2 pieces then you can use. So it's a really economical way of building a base. So what you'll see now is that just goes on top of there, and we've got another one there that can just sit on like so, and they work really well. Straight away we've got the two bases, very irregular shapes, but we've got the gaps around the edge as well, which is where I will put the grit once these are glued down. So what I think I'll do is I will make, that might be a bit too small, so what I'm going to do is break another piece off here, like so. Again, a bit too big, so we'll snap off that bit and snap off that bit there. Again, nice irregular shape, and then just halve it. There we go. That works really quite well. That's a bit uneven. Sometimes you'll get that. It doesn't really, it doesn't sometimes split without a flat, nice even surface. So you can just tidy it up with your craft knife or with a file. Get it nice and smooth. There we go, it's working better. And this one as well, let's have a look. I sort of like that the way it is. It's not exactly straight, but no, I think that'll work. So we'll just use those 4. So they can go over there. All I'm going to do now is glue these onto the bases. Again, just simply using super glue gel. Don't need much on these, it binds really well and really quickly. So I just find a couple of drops will suffice. Just press that down. And the last one is going on now. Right. So they are all on the bases now. So what I need to do now is build up where there's gaps around the main piece of cork. I want to fill that with grit. So again, this is the grit that I use. It's very sort of medium grade type grit. So it's not too thick, not too thin. And then all I do is, there's a bit gungy at the end there, what's come off. A bit more glue was probably required on that one. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just get the glue and just go in and gently squeeze the glue into the gaps. Doesn't matter if you get any on the cork, it just looks like where it's the little small rocks and dust, etc. have blown onto the rocks. Make sure they're all filled in. Then very simply get your grit, drop it in, tap off the excess, and there we go. So what I'm going to do is do all of these 4 very, very quickly. Again, just tap off the excess. Any gaps you can just go back in and build that up. With gel, it sort of really fills the gaps, but it doesn't run. What you want really when you're doing these. Again, just fill in those gaps. And the last one. Okay, so make sure they're all covered. Drop it in the grit. And they are done as well. So what I'm going to do now is put a photograph on screen now. These are a bit closer up so you can see exactly what they look like from a better distance. So the next job is to just paint these. Now with desert, it's your own real personal preference what colour you paint them. The way I've painted my SAS ones, I painted them with Vallejo English Uniform. When that was dry, I then did a wash of Agrax Earthshade and then some dry brushing. So what I'm going to do is go away and paint these. I think watching me paint 4 bases wouldn't be very entertaining. So what I'm going to do is go away, paint these, ink them. When I come back, I'll show you exactly how I dry brush them, just to get that nice kind of sharp desert effect. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, welcome back. So as you'll see, all 4 bases have been painted and given a rather heavy wash in Agrax Earthshade. These are fully dried, and there'll be a picture on the screen now of what they look like from close up. As you can see, paint's dry, it washes dry, and just to recap, I used Vallejo English Uniform with a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Now, these are very close to being completed. What I just need to do now is add a bit of a dry brush, just to bring out the kind of the upper surface of the rock and the grit. And this is where it really becomes rock looking. So the way I do this is with the base coat of English Uniform, and what I'm going to do is add a very small drop of Sunny Skin Tone. So this will bring the English Uniform, make it a lighter colour, but I'd only use a small amount of the Sunny Skin Tone. I don't want it massively stark, because after this there's going to be one last really light dry brush just for the outer edges and the extremities of the base. So at this stage I don't want it looking too bright, so I will just crack on with the dry brushing. Again, you don't need too much, and with the Sunny Skin Tone, it literally is just a very small drop. Otherwise it's going to be too bright and too stark, and it's not going to give the colour that I really want. So let's start mixing this together. So again, as with most dry brushing, you really want to take off 99.9% of the paint. But what I'm going to do is come in with Mr. Old Battered Dry Brush here, and just literally it can be quite rough because there's very little paint on the brush, and it can be quite rough. A little bit snapped off there. That can happen. It's quite brittle, the cork at the edges, so just be careful it doesn't snap off. What I'm doing is going in, and this really lightens the rock as you're doing the dry brushing. So I don't tend to spend a lot of time on the dry brushing. Again, if you're using this technique, you could also, I've also used it using grey rock, so just painting grey. Use exactly the same techniques, but they were for some Games Workshop, Adeptus Mechanicus, I think they were. Never got around to completing them, and probably never will. But they were mounted on a very similar base, but I painted out their base is grey rather than this desert colour. But this was the colour that I really wanted to use for my SAS. Again, just work that in there. The beauty with this as well is, as I've used super glue to bind the grit, it's going nowhere. Dynamite's not going to shift this stuff, so you can be quite rough with the dry brush, and it's not going to flake off. If you use PVA or anything like that, you'd be losing chunks of it by now. Just 2 more to go. Again, wipe off the excess. Oh, that's a bit heavy. And again, as with most dry brush, just go over it roughly. You can strike the edges to bring out the fine details, the sharp edges of the rock. Don't need to do it too much, because the next stage in this will be to add a really light dry brush over that. and that will catch and bring out all the main highlights of the bases. And then one last one, again just wipe off all the paint, and then just give it a nice dry brush there. So that seems to be working really quite well. And already they're starting to look very deserty and very rocky, which is definitely the aim of using this technique. Just finish off the sides there. Okay, so that's all 4 done. As you can see, very quick dry brush, just using the English uniform with a dab of Sunny Skin Tone. Really quick dry brush. Now the last, or the second dry brush, I'm going to be using this, which is Vallejo Ivory. I use ivory rather than white for a lot of my painting. It's not as bright. It's got a slightly muted. It's a muted white colour, but it works really well for this. Now what I'm going to do here is very small dab, and then as before, brush straight into the ivory. Again, wipe off the excess. Now with this, I'm not going to go really all over it. All I'm going to do now is use kind of the edge of the brush very gently, just over the edges, and just very gently over the grit, and this will give the bases some depth, some definition. But again, what I don't do is I don't go overboard, because this is so bright. I don't need to. If you put too much on, it's gonna ruin the effect overall. So again, just the outermost, and again just use the edge of the brush just to strike, just to hit the edge of that rock, as you can see. Same with this one. So there's already the paint still left on the brush, so I don't need to load up a batch of new paint. And again, it's just a case of hitting the extreme edges of the cork, of the rock, and just bringing out those extreme highlights. I think in this case, less is definitely more. I don't go over the top here. It will lose that effect. And it's literally, it's just striking the edges. Okay, I can add a bit more to the brush. Again, wipe all that off. So this one here, you can see is really quite irregular, quite jagged. So it's going to produce some nice. Oh, it's a bit heavy there. I actually need to wipe a bit more of that off. That's a lot better. I mean, I do make the odd mistake. It's not going to detract too heavily from the model. Again, just the extreme highlights, the extreme sharp edges. And it's just going to make the base pop a bit more. Like I mentioned before, when I did these with the Adeptus Mechanicus, I used grey bases, but it was exactly the same technique. I just use a lighter paint. I'm going to just use pure white on that one. Again, and then the last one, again, there's still paint loaded into the brush, so I don't need a new lot of paint. Again, it's just hitting the extreme top edges, so the top of the grit and the top of the rock. And like I said before, less really is more when I'm doing this. And that is, I'm going to call that finished. So there you have it, all 4 bases done in very little time at all, and they're quick, but they look effective. That's what I like about them, is that they're really easy to do. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they've turned out. There'll be some pictures on the screen now of these a bit closer up, and some better quality photographs there. But that's it. So those bases made with a drying time in less than 45 minutes, just using cork, grit, super glue and some paints. Once I've painted the figures, I attach them to them, and the final bit is I will paint the rim, and that'll be the completed figure. So there we have it, a very simple way of making rocky desert bases, but this can be used on any kind of rock, grey, darker, lighter, whatever. For me, it's just the cork and the dry brushing that really makes it. Well, I hope you find that useful. If you do use the technique, please let me know in the comments how you found it, whether you've done it anything differently. I've always love to know what techniques people are using. I could talk about basing all day. I absolutely love basing my figures and coming up with new and unique ways to base them. But that's it. Like I say, I hope you find it useful. So I'm going to go away, make some more of these, and then work on my SAS desert sections for the rest of the week. So thanks for watching, and as always, take care, may your dice roll well, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye bye for now.